Well, welcome to Millennials in Ministry, guys. Today, I'm so excited to be interviewing Stephen Siwek. He is the director and executive producer of the award-winning film Future of the Church. And I stumbled across Stephen because I was researching who was having conversations about the future of the church. I'm doing all this research on my own about the future of technology, the future of the world, the future of marketing. And I was curious, like, who's talking about the future of the church? And lo and behold, I typed it in, found the Future of the Church film. And what's really cool is that Stephen came to my church and personally handed me an invitation to the premiere of his video. And at the time, I didn't really know who he was, and I couldn't make it to the premiere. But now, lo and behold, we're having this interview. So it's like a year later, I'm here talking to you. So I'm really excited about it. And Stephen, the first question I want to ask you is, how did you get into making this film? And with all of the conversations you've had with 80 plus pastors interviewing them, what do you believe is the future of the church?
Oh boy.
I know it's a loaded question.
30 minutes there. Okay, so I first got into this because back in 2012, I was in college at Pepperdine, and I was doing a capstone project for Chevron. And what our goal was essentially to come up with strategies for Chevron so that their future looked bright. And so in my research phase of the project, I hit up ExxonMobil and actually found that they had a futuristic document where they outlined the strategies that they were going to implement all the way through the year 2040. Okay. And so I was like, whoa, this is amazing, and this is going to help my paper. And then I started reading it. I was already fascinated by the church because I had grown up in the church, and I end up reading it, and I'm like, okay, well, the church needs a document like this. This is so helpful. The way they've essentially unified their company by creating a 50-page document with lots of research, and essentially just found ways to project it out or traject it out over the next generation. And I was like, ooh, the church could use that. And so that kind of began my quest for wanting to know more about what the future held for the church. And I happened to meet a guy named Jared Seba, who we had worked together on video projects before. And he kind of actually encouraged me to do a video for him, because I was just going to go old school and do a recorder and get pastors' thoughts on the future of the church. But since I didn't know anything about really the inner workings of the church, I just asked pastors what they thought, and we put it in video form, and 3 years later, it was a documentary.
That's amazing. And so with all of the answers that you've gotten from them, what do you personally think the church is going to look like 20, 30 years from now? Even as a millennial, what do you think? Because we've got people like Francis Chan, who's left, mega church organized religion and returning to something he's called We Are Church. And I follow him very closely, returning to the book of Acts. He really believes that the church is going to be looking like the book of Acts, but I want to ask you, what do you think?
Okay,
technology,
there are a million ways to answer this question. I will try to answer it in a way that hopefully makes sense for our audience here. And that is to say, I also approached it thinking we'd be talking about aliens or something. When I think of the future, I'm like, oh, this is going to be crazy. I'm watching Blade Runner and thinking how the world is going to become so decrepit. And we all there's no mention of church in Blade Runner 2049. And you're like, okay. So what comes to my mind though is I'm thinking we should be talking about all that stuff. In the end, it is all about Jesus, and whether the model changes to be the church that's not even seen in Blade Runner, or whether it's the most hopping and happening thing in the world. I don't honestly think it all that much matters about the model. I think it more so matters of is Jesus still the center of our lives? And is our witness that compelling that we preach him, whether we're the most majority or whether we are literally the smallest minority in the world's population of people who follow a certain religion. And I think, honestly, it's probably going to be the latter. If I had to really point my finger on what's going to happen, is that I think we will become a lot more of a minority, and that the ways in which you see church done today it's probably not going to be the way it's done when we are, like, most of us watching our 20s or 30s. When we're in our 60s, I mean, there's no way church is going to still be done the way it is, where essentially we are the majority. We're the mega churches. We've got like people and huge budgets. I don't think it's going to be that drastic, but at the same time, I do think it's going to change, and we're going to need to get real wise about, and really transformed, honestly, about the fact that the message of Jesus changes our lives.
Yeah, that's good. And talk a little bit too about last time we talked a little bit about Facebook and just the technology side of things. Like, you think that the church is capable of becoming even more intricate into people's lives than even Facebook is. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think this is going to sound like a no-brainer for some of you, but maybe for others, if you haven't thought about it, okay, so no doubt, we go to church like 1 to 2 hours out of a 168-hour week. So many of us are much more inundated with what culture is saying to us than what the church is saying to us. And so this shouldn't come as a surprise, but like, Facebook knows a heck of a lot of information about us. Thank you, Instagram, for doing this as they listen in. But honestly, and this is what we have to think about. We have to be willing to have these kind of conversations. Like, should the church, which could know as much information about you, your local church, little c, should it take advantage of that? Like, Erin, if you miss church on Sunday because you're in the hospital versus you're on vacation, should the church know that? Like, wouldn't that help in a community group sort of setting? Wouldn't it help the overall church feel like, hey, things are still going well because, like, it's just spring break and everyone's on vacation? Or like, oh, shoot, like, something big happened. The problem happened in these people's lives and these people's lives. To what extent should the church use data to better understand its members? And I think that sounds real scary, but I think I think there are many people probably working on that problem right now, and they would be church management software companies that make millions of dollars a year. No offense to them, but like, I think that there's probably a group of those companies that are really working to better understand members and are positively pitching that to churches as like, this will help. Like, if we knew more about people going here, we'd be more effective. Like, if you knew that 50% of the people at your church, even on a like personal level, if they were struggling with their finances, I think you'd find a way to speak more to finances than you would on other passages in the Bible. Like, I think you could get a lot more specific, and I actually think you could, that would be helpful, but will we be willing to make that jump? I think for some of you who attend really large churches, you should be aware that I think this is in the next few years, if not already right now, type of conversation is, what sort of data should we be collecting on the people who attend church? Not in a creepy way. Oh, man. But get ready.
Get ready. No, that's really good. I also want to talk to you a little bit about millennials when it comes to the arts, because, you know, you've been a part of producing a couple of really, really great films, both of which I've watched, and both are produced very, very well. When it comes to millennials and art in the church, how do you think that we can be more effective in bringing value to the church through art?
Wow. Okay, so I wrote a little something on a board behind me. I love...
All right, show me. Wow, look at you, going the extra mile.
Okay, wait. Which one am I on? Oh, guys, I can't do this. I'm not this talented. What does this one say? Is that... Yeah, okay. So this is like essentially the opposite ends of the spectrum for what the church has to deal with. This side of the spectrum is called creators, and this side is called users. And it's not like one is like significantly better than the other, but I think the simple point is to say that, yes, to your point, it would be great to really see more creators in the church than followers or users, which is what I would say for the majority of the last several decades we have seen. But there are some incredible exceptions. It will be great to get more creators. I think the problem that happens with creators, though, right now in the church, this includes myself, is it can get real easy to silo yourself, though, because either you don't have the money or collaboration is hard because it is hard. And you kind of then go on your own crusade and you like make this thing on your own. And I don't think that's the greatest way to be creative. So I would say that the best way to be creative is to really be collaborative. There are certainly going to be times where we are inspired and it's like, we've got to just do this thing. Right. But I think where culture is really beating out the church is that how in the world is Black Panther made? Oh my gosh. I mean, there's thousands of people that are making that movie. It's like, but in the church, if we had the same challenge, it would be like 3 of us making that movie. You're like, do that. You got to get like a ton of people together to make these things happen. That is really hard, honestly. But I think that we have incredible individual creative talent right now in the church, and there's just not a catalyst right now to really ensure that something's done with individual creative talent to make it collaborative. But I think once that is somewhat figured out, or once creatives become more okay sharing in the church, I think we're going to do something really special that ends up leading culture and not just following.
Yeah, that's really good. That's good, Stephen. Okay, now moving on to the last question here. You have the future of the church, but also your next film, or the one that you've recently worked on, is called Dear Church, I'm Gay, which you told me about the first time we talked. Since then, I've watched it. It's phenomenal. There's a link to it in my bio, for the people watching if you want to watch it. But with that being said, ever since I've been promoting it, I've had friends like, what exactly is this about? Like, why did he make this? And, what exactly are they saying through this film? But I want to know, why you attack the gray areas when it comes to topics like this, and also why you created it, and just feedback you've gotten from people while you made it.
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, I absolutely love making gray area topic films. I don't personally, I really want to be a witness for Christ, and I think that a lot of the people that I like hanging around with have really hard questions. Yeah. And it is very hard to answer them with these like pie in the sky answers. The Bible, in many ways, Jesus is so paradoxical. It's so strange and it's so wonderful. And like the Bible is not always black and white, and it's sometimes gray. And it is, but it's so wonderful to study, and it's so amazing how like God deals with the gray all over the place. And so like I just love the topics in general. Like I just got back yesterday from a conference on hell. Dear people, I mean, did everyone realize there are different views of hell? And so like my next project is probably going to be on the different views of hell. I just find it absolutely fascinating. But let's get to this one. So this one's called Dear Church, I'm Gay. Yeah. And first of all, my brother-in-law is gay. And my brother-in-law, like I have always wanted to connect with him on a very deep level. And it's just never been easy for me, because I come from a traditional, always raised in the church. Like, I mean, it's been a huge movement even to go from like saying you can be born gay. So like that's a big shift from how I was raised. That was not even a thought. And now I've like gone on this long journey. Preston Sprinkle is the guy who essentially hired my company to produce this. So Jared, who also made Future of the Church with me, helped me make Dear Church, I'm Gay. And essentially the idea was, Preston approached us. He said, hey guys, I want to tell people like the traditional view of the church, but I want to do it in a compelling way so that I don't lose people who are affirming, which means essentially they think gay marriage is totally fine. And I was like, wow, that's a challenge. Like, let's essentially get both sides of the aisle, the affirming and non-affirming sides, to watch a documentary or a short film 20 minutes through without like hating each other. Okay. Right. So that was a balance throughout the whole thing. And essentially the way that we approached it was just tell people stories. And it is incredible for those who are on the affirming side or like have gay friends. You'll be like, yeah, no, duh, Stephen. But I had really never conversed much with a gay or lesbian or transgender person. And first of all, that's like a necessity if you want to get involved in this conversation. Second of all, I really had not, although I knew of the 6 passages in Scripture that reference homosexuality, I simply took them as like, oh yeah, for sure they're wrong. Meaning gay marriage is wrong. But there's a lot more to them. And let me just say right now, for those who are wondering what I think, I do believe in the traditional view of marriage. I do think that relationships between a man and a man or a woman and a woman are not biblical. But it's not that easy to come to that conclusion as you might think. There is a lot to tease through the verses that are in the Bible. There's a lot to understand about Jewish culture at large in Christ's time. And I think there's a lot to like even grasp and wrestle with about science and what you really believe about the fall of man. It is not black and white, this topic. And I think, but at the end of the day, and we know this, but we're called to love people. And thank God I'm not the ultimate judge of people. Thank God I don't have to get up on a stage and be like, so let me just tell you what marriage is and what it's not. That's not the idea of what we're supposed to be talking to people. Like if Christ has transformed our lives, the biggest thing I took away from this project is like amazing to hear people's stories that literally made me cry. But one of the best things is like consistency of faith. I mean, if we're going to be like, oh, gay marriage, that is wrong. You cannot, nope, 0%. Well, then we better not be down for like, as I've heard it said, our heterosexual drummer who's sleeping with his girlfriend. It's like, come on, guys. There's some consistency issues here. If sexual sin is immoral across the board, then we need to treat it as immoral across the board. And that is a really hard thing to say because not everyone feels super good about that because at some point we're all sexually broken. But I think for those who really want to engage with the conversation thoughtfully on and either you don't have a LGBT friend or you really wonder what in the world is this Christian position and where in the world did it come from and all those people in the 1500s who have no clue about the world in which we live in and like you should watch our video and you should watch the videos that come after it that are more teaching oriented, curriculum based, because I think it will make the Christian position seem a lot more like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying now. And I also like Christians, by the way, how you're pointing out that love should still come first, and ultimately we're not the judge. So, like, how wonderful! And now I can feel. I mean, for some Christians, they've actually felt guilt over having a LGBT friend. That's ridiculous. Like, get me some LGBT friends, people.
Right. And you know what's interesting, Stephen? One thing I love about this film and about this topic is that it reminds me of, I did an internship at the International House of Prayer in Kansas City. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you when we talked previously, but one of my Bible teachers there, his name is Stuart Grease, phenomenal Bible teacher. And he was telling us in the class how God didn't actually destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of the homosexual lifestyle that was lived. And I was thinking like, wait, what? Like, that's not what I've been taught. That's not what I've heard. You know what I mean? And he's like, there's literally a scripture. And I pulled it up because I wanted to mention it in this talk because it goes right with it. Is Ezekiel 16:49. In the New Living Translation, it says, Sodom's sins were pride, gluttony, and laziness, while the poor and needy suffered outside her door. Like, hold on, wait, like, what? God, you destroyed an entire nation, not because they were living a homosexual lifestyle, but because they were stuck up, they were lazy and idle with their time, they ate too much, and they neglected the poor. I'm like, those are things that I do every day, like not every day, but you know what I'm saying? Like I fit in that category. And so now that totally changes my psyche about what I believe about homosexuality and why, because I'm learning that even through this conversation that a lot of what I believe is based upon what I've heard instead of what I've read. And I think a lot of us Christians, millennials, everyone included, we need to be better about learning and reading the Bible for ourselves instead of having all these beliefs based upon what we've heard. You know what I'm saying? It's powerful.
Tell me about it. I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, man, Stephen, there's so much more that we could talk about, but I've loved chatting with you, and these conversations are so important. If you're watching, make sure you check out the link in my bio because there's links to both of his films, Future of the Church and Dear Church, I'm Gay. Stephen, it's been phenomenal getting to know you more. I know we'll talk again because I love chatting with you. You got a really cool mind, and the way you process things is really awesome. But hey, if somebody wants to follow you or just stay in touch with you and what you're doing, even with Glory Unlimited, how can they stay in touch with you?
I'm a terrible person on social media, so let's see. I probably
maybe just the website.
How old will I sound if I say LinkedIn? I'm just kidding.
No. It's okay. That's where you're at, man. That's where you're at.
Probably the best way is you can go to our website, gloryunlimited.com, and then you can shoot me an email, and I'm usually best on email.
Okay. Deal. All right, Stephen, we'll have a good day. We'll stay in touch, man.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate you. All right. Bye-bye.